Before we go into the music you've been making, I want to jump back to something else. I read down, and we spoke about Michigan shortly before the camera was on, but Yankee Springs. What can you tell me about Yankee Springs?
It's a beautiful place it's in Michigan. It's around a body of lakes there called one main lake called Gun Lake, and it was something that we all kind of grew up, going down and camping during the winter time, and that was, I think, a lot of where the initial love of music kind of formed, because it was all of these different people from all these different backgrounds and friends and family and family's friends, and everybody seemed to kind of be connected and spend this time together in these cabins out in the middle of the woods, and everybody would be there to play music, and it was that sort of gathering that kind of drew a lot of inspiration for what we were going to do musically, and sort of pushed us in that direction, in that world. So
a lot of their upbringing has a lot to do with Yankee Springs. I think.
Yeah, it's a very important place. It's a very special place.
Yeah.
It might be difficult to describe, but what would it look like in terms of, you say there's a lot of music? Is it just long summer evenings, people playing music, all kinds?
Yeah, I mean, we would go there in this winter, in the middle of winter. So, I mean, it all,
hopefully snow on the ground.
Yeah, and there always usually is. So it's just a kind of a forest landscape with a lot of just white hills, and these cabins are just made completely out of wood and stone, and someone would always bring a drum kit, someone always would bring their amplifiers, and it just kept on getting bigger and bigger, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. At some point.
Was there a moment then that you kind of felt, okay, this is what we want to do, we want to be in a band?
Yeah, I don't think that it was ever
I was pretty young. I was probably like 3 years old.
Yeah.
When I saw my first guitar, I wanted to be in a band.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I don't think it was very, I was never like an evidential thing where it was like, yeah, we're going to be, in a band and put something together. I think very early on, I've always wanted to put together a group of something, and I never thought it would be a group with brothers involved or Danny involved, and so it just kind of happened naturally by synthesis of being around each other and playing the same music and growing up listening to the same stuff, and everybody having that commonality, that something naturally happened, and we just started playing music together, and it kind of went from there. And
it was rather organic, and when there were times where it seemed like there was a key element that was missing or needed to be, attention needed to be directed towards there. It was always helped. Like the momentum has always been kept moving, I think, since day one, since it did form. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it happened naturally, but it's been very steady since day one.
Was there a moment then where it was kind of, this sounds weird, but that it was official that you were in a band, that you go, okay, now we have our first show?
I don't know if it still feels officially like we're in a band.
Yeah, no. Can you even, I'd say, I guess to answer the question, it really felt official to me when we, and I don't even know how legal it was, but we had the contract. We made up a contract, and we had it as professionally done as we could, and we all signed it, and that was a really cool, because I felt like I was signed into it, and that was when I was able to just fully commit myself, which was cool.
At this point then, how far along were you with writing your own music and then kind of figuring out what path to go down?
Pretty far along.
Surprisingly, pretty far along.
Yeah, I think because it was something that was so organic and natural, it seems to be, and still seems to be, that there are 4 elements to the group. There are 4 people contributing whatever influences or whatever, musicality that they want to contribute. So it's always been like, I'll write something, I'll maybe arrange a song, the skeleton of that, the structure of it. Danny may do that in his way. We all kind of write. Sam and Josh do, and it's always like someone brings something to the table, and it's like, I've got this riff, I've got this arrangement, here's these parts, and we just kind of like, all right, let's go, and I'll play it through once, and everybody just puts down whatever they naturally want to, and so everybody kind of just writes their own part. So I mean, that's kind of how we've been doing it for a very long time, and we all kind of had been writing stuff for a long time before we actually started playing together. So there was a lot of songs. I think we kind of just continued to grow, you know, as far as songwriters.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there's a lot of influences. So obviously, all four of you will have different influences. So Danny, is there something that Jake, that you like that Jake completely doesn't like?
But that's I mean, there's, yeah, every one of us has things that, you know, we like more than others. But one of the coolest things is we all generally, in a general sense, all kind of share similar influences. Yeah, we share an appreciation for all genres of music. I'd say I probably listen to more of the folk, maybe singer-songwriter type music, you know, on the road as often. I'd say maybe there's a lot more blues in your world. There's a lot more.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of something that I like that you don't like.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to do.
You picked the two worst because I think we share
did that
pretty.
on purpose.
I think we share a pretty similar taste. I think when it comes to Sam and Josh, you know, it branches out a little more. Sam's kind of a jazz freak. Josh is just surprising. You know, you really have to have an open mind and in an open sense. Yeah, an open palette to listen to it. But it's music.
So when you sign a document, okay, now we're officially there. What was it like being picked up as maybe it didn't feel as quickly for you, but as quickly as it did?
I think when things started to move with a bit more aggressive momentum, it picked up very quickly, and it was like
it's like right after I graduated.
one thing after another. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, we had found someone that we knew would be appropriate to manage us. And we had gone through other opportunities, and we had hand selected this individual to be management. And then quickly after that, it was a record deal, and a publicist came in, and you know, the team just started assembling, and that happened relatively quick. And that I don't think we expected to happen as quickly as it did. So, you know, it's just kind of living with that now.
Yeah, we switched or we, you know, hired management, like you said, and then that honestly just led to so many different doors, and each door just kept opening to another door, and everyone knows each other in all of these doors. So it
seems like a small world when, you know, you get into a level where a lot of these sharks are at, you know, it's like
the world's getting bigger, but the world just keeps getting smaller at the same time.
Yeah, but it is an interesting thing, and maybe if I play devil's advocate a little bit, you play guitar music, which isn't in vogue, so to say, these days. So were you surprised that so many people from Elton John and everybody kind of embraced it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very humbling thing. It just, you know, gives a certain sense of reassurance that there are people out there who appreciate, you know, that type of, you know, guitar music that we're playing, so to speak, and that there's a place for that in this world, and people still appreciate it, and there's still a lot to be done with the genre, you know, of rock and roll. And there's, you know, there's kind of a limitlessness or a sense of freedom, and there's kind of coming to a Wild West thing, you know. It's like there's so much unexplored here, and it's like, so it's kind of reinvigorating when people like Elton John and you know, who else? Tom Hanks came into the studio once.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
I don't know
he sat down and listened to like a couple of the songs. He's heard more of the album than anyone else.
At this point.
It's pretty crazy.
Probably more than the label too.
Yeah.
He's like, well, that's just bitching, boys.
He's Tom Hanks. I mean,
yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, but and then you know the mass, you know, the people that are showing up to listen to the sets and stuff, and it's like that sort of, you know, gives us that reassurance. It's like there's a place for this kind of music in the world. You know?
Right, and especially as you grow up, because when you have those influences that you have, and that type of music isn't being played on the radio, what kind of mentality does that breed as you go into the band? Did you just think, let's just make the music that we like? And
very much so, yeah.
You kind of just said it, yeah. We've always just kind of had to be, you know, like Greta Van Fleet is kind of its own thing. We've always kind of realized that when we're writing music, it's not for, you know, we're not writing songs expecting them to be in certain places, you know, in the industry. We're writing them because we like to write them, and then we have the ability to select which songs fit with each other, you know, which songs kind of carry messages, and that's kind of how we've been trying to put together our albums.
The message in a lot of the music and it being written for the purpose that the song was initially for was never intended to be on a radio format or like, you know, a piece, some sort of a label format or any of those things. They were strictly written for the intention and the time period or whatever was being reflected at that point in our lives at that time. And it was just something that, again, was very organic. And I think that it was just a lot of the things we grew up listening to, influences, and just trying to be truthful and tell a story. And so
being
very
honest
organic.
is important.
Yeah, the honesty of it really is.
Being
so,
honest
I mean,
is rock and roll.
it did well with radio and things like that, but I think that's because of the underlying essence of what the songs are originally there for, which is a lot of the truth, you know, or just whatever they were there for.
How much of the live show is in your mind then when you write songs and when you kind of try to... Do you think about how it will come across?
It's kind of funny you say that because a lot of our songs are written in a live setting, whether or not it's on stage, you know, depends.
Right.
But you know, even in the studio, we're often set up in a live setting, and we wrote a handful of songs out of our repertoire in the studio. So I think it helps that we have written some of them in a live sense because that's kind of how we are used to it first before it even gets recorded and sometimes re-recorded, you know. So I think a lot of the time it starts out that way.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, especially in the sense where a song is more aggressive or more intense, I think that's sort of a reflection of a lot of, you know, playing live and touring and traveling, that sort of constantness. And that could sort of, I guess it reflects a lot of the chaos and a lot of that. And so I guess another thing too is it depends on what mood you're in or what state you're in when you're actually writing a song. It can be reflective of certain things.
Finally then, because I believe you are working on a record now.
Yes.
We are.
And it's all going to be original material, new material that's on songs that haven't been released yet. And you mentioned kind of the story and the honesty that you want. So what have you noticed about the new songs, where it's headed, as much as you can reveal?
I think there's a lot of evolution going on, you know.
Yeah.
In you know, so for, you know, the last year of just touring and nonstop, you know, that I think that whether or not we internally know or recognize it, that we've kind of grown as musicians and sort of carry a different perspective of, you know, ourselves, our music, and the world that we've seen. And I think so a lot of that is kind of coming off in the work now for the new album. And it's the first album, you know, it's like us kicking down the doors, you know, so that's an important statement to be made. So there is that overlying aggression that it has, and it's like the chaotic, you know, in this. But there's also a lot of, I think, a lot more maturity as far as studio songs go and how we arrange them and the technicality of the parts and how everything moves and outflows. So there's a lot to look forward to, I guess.
The beautiful thing, is we had a lot more time to work on this album. So we really had the time to really spend some love, you know, on this album, spend some time treating it.
Getting to know it.
Getting to know it, yeah, you know, become familiar so you can actually identify what you're really looking for rather than having to make split decisions. And I think that is a key part of the way this album has been sculpted and the way it's sounding, really.
I have one more question. I hope I have time, but...
we'll make sure you have time.
Yeah.
But is there because obviously there have been some Led Zeppelin comparisons, I think good or bad, either way you can take it. But are you conscious of that fact, and does that affect kind of how the music that you write?
I think that we've become more conscious of it because I don't think before we ever really realized, in a lot of senses, the similarities that or the commonalities that we share with that group. And it's being said over and over. I think it's one of the greatest compliments that could ever be given to a young band like ourselves, and then arguably one of the greatest rock bands of all time. So that is humbling and inspiring and honorable in that sense. But I think that we've become more conscious of the similarities because it's been said, and I think we've taken some time to go back and almost identify with it and go, oh yeah, it's interesting because there is a lot of those commonalities. Yeah. Even if Zeppelin wasn't an overwhelming influence of ours, it still was influential, and it's like we can certainly see it, but overall it doesn't really affect the writing of our music, and it doesn't necessarily affect how we're going to go about evolving. It's just wind to the sail, right? Yeah, wind to the sail. I like that. That's good.
Thanks, man.
Well, can't wait for what you to see what you come up with. So, guys, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.